and it makes it a little bit different. And I've had to learn to be culturally sensitive as a Korean woman, and I wasn't taught that. So, and I have my
So,
own biases.
yeah, for sure, Sylvia. That sounds complicated. Everybody's got their own layers, right?
Yeah.
So Lake Highlands area Moms and More Against Racism. We are live checking in with a couple of our AAPI friends from the beloved community. Sylvia and Anne, this term AAPI is kind of new to some of us. What do you each like to be grouped as if someone uses a term like that? Asian American, what do you prefer?
Personally, I prefer Asian American. I'm not overly sensitive to terms other than slang terms. So, but Asian American, and I think it is a mouthful and it is confusing because it is a new term and people need to look it up, and we need to be able to maybe first reference, say, Asian American, Pacific Islander. I remember years ago, my husband asked, "What is Pacific Islander?" And he's white. And I said, "I've been checking that box my entire life." It's like, I can't believe you don't know that. So he's like, I didn't. So
Can you explain it to us?
can I explain?
Yeah, the Pacific Islander part.
Not that well, honestly.
Yeah.
So I think Southeast Asia and everything in the Pacific Southeast. So
Okay, just kind of all grouped together.
So
Well, and I don't know, I wasn't able to be at the Chismes chat on Saturday that was talking about just the term Latinx versus Latina and Hispanic, but basically the consensus was just ask people what they prefer. Don't be shy about asking, and individuals might be different than a group. So Anne, what about you?
I like to be identified as Asian or Asian American, but technically Asian American, as I was born and raised in Oklahoma, and whereas my parents were Vietnamese immigrants. And so I feel like the Asian culture is deeply ingrained in me, but I was born and raised here. So technically Asian American, but I don't mind either one.
So Anne, you said your parents were immigrants from where?
Vietnam.
Vietnam. Okay. But you grew up and you were born and raised in Oklahoma.
That's right.
Okay. So very American.
Very American.
Have you had the experience of people assuming you were born and raised somewhere else?
Yes. And so some of the questions as I was preparing for this talk, and I've been talking to a lot of my friends and family, but a common question that many of us have gotten is, where are you from?
Mm-hmm.
And when I say Oklahoma, there have been so many times in my life where somebody then says, no, where are you from? And they emphasize the from, or they'll say, where are you really from? And I'll have to say again, I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was born in St. John's Hospital. You know, I was born and raised here, and but I know where they're getting at. So then I always end up saying, my parents are from Vietnam.
Okay. So do you feel like that teaches them a lesson to how to ask that next time?
I can't speak for them, but when I see their reaction, I don't gather that.
Okay.
I gather that they were looking for validating what country my ancestors originated from, and I gather that it's still validating that I'm from Vietnam.
What about you, Sylvia?
Well, it's almost like you're a visitor. You're only passing through, so you're not here to stay. But I grew up in Arkansas, so and similar to you in rural Arkansas, but I was born in Korea and I was adopted. I'm in the first generation of internationally adopted children in the '60s, so it was very unconventional and. My parents were white and segregation was happening and racism was rampant and it was post World War II and there was hostile feelings toward Japanese and Cold War was happening and Vietnam was happening. And so, yeah, it was a very complicated time. But people would ask me starting early, like, where are you from? But later, like, where are your parents from? And I'd say, well, my dad's from New York, my mom's from Arkansas. No. Well, where are their parents from? And they would just continue. And then I'd finally say, so you want to know my nationality? I'm Korean. But versus asking, where are you from? I mean, that was not. But I actually had people that finally would say, what are you? They would say, what are you? And I would say, I'm a person. And it was really, that was the big insult because they didn't see you as a human. What are you? And that was really those are some early memories. And you kind of laugh it off. And I learned to joke about it and go, I'm Irish, and it's like, don't let the black hair fool you, because that was my maiden name. And so we learned to joke about it. But at the same time, I don't know anybody else who's ever been asked, what are you? So,
Yeah. Well, that's a great point of kind of what has led to this, perhaps some of this dehumanizing vocabulary and speech that's been happening towards the Asian American community really for decades.
centuries. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But specifically in the last few months, did you guys feel scared and alarmed when the language started happening around the pandemic, specifically our president at the time, President Trump, saying the awful things he did about the pandemic? Were you alarmed? Were you scared? What did you think that would come of that? Did you ask people not to do that?
I was horrified. I was horrified, and I called out a few people on Facebook that I saw that made the Wuhan. They didn't call it Kung flu, but they said Wuhan flu. And it's, please don't use that term. And this is a person who professes to be she's a Christian, and I said that is not Christ-like. It's not loving. It's not helpful. And she still rebutted against me. That was hurtful to me, and she didn't get it, and she wasn't going to change her tune. So I've seen that with people. I did. I didn't have a fear for myself, but I definitely felt it, and I think the story that impacted me the most was the 2-year-old baby boy. I don't know if anybody remembers this story. It was in Midland. The family was going to Sam's on a Saturday, and the family was attacked by a guy with a knife, and he started slashing them up and calling them, Kung flu. And the baby spent like 2 nights in the hospital, but as he had a slash across his face, that's traumatic. And that was a direct result of what our former president said. That happened, I believe, last May. So that was upsetting. Yeah.
Well, and when Sylvia, you told me that story when we talked about your friend not backing down. And what I'm really bothered by right now, and we saw it in the hearings last week when one of Texas representatives said such offensive things, and then was given an opportunity after hearing heartfelt Asian American sentiment on why that's so offensive and wrong. Please just stop doing it. Then he said, no, I'm not going to. No apologies. And I'm so bothered by this concept that what we say, like we have some kind of freedom to hurt other people. And I just feel like, wow, I don't know what the lesson is, except that if someone says they're hurting, that we believe them, and that we do what we can when they say, please stop saying that, you're hurting me, to stop saying that or stop doing that. I guess that's just the lesson I see.
that representative has no consequences. So he in fact, he'll double down because there'll be people to support him. And because he has no consequences, he doesn't have to back down. And I do feel like there has to be accountability. And as people realize there's accountability, and I think this group is a wonderful group that has helped influence accountability in ways that it needs to be influencing, and give people a voice who didn't have a voice. And I feel like there are a lot of people who are on this side, but they needed leadership like you've been able to provide, and Danita.
So
That's,
Sylvia, how do we hold someone like your friend accountable when they say, no, I'm not going to stop using those terms?
I pray for karma, but I don't know. I have. I just hope that hopefully somewhere down the road she will see where she's wrong. But just continuing to call them out and voicing your opinion versus being meek and not getting involved. There is an emotional risk to that, so you have to be prepared, and you need to know when to fight that fight.
What do you think, Anne? How do we hold people accountable in our own circles? Especially, I mean, I'm so proud of you all for speaking up, but what do you want someone like me, a white ally, to do for you?
That's a really good question, Lowry. And I just wanted to go back to the other one real quick. And when Trump was saying all these things and saying China virus, Kung flu virus, and when COVID hit, he wasn't doing rallies. And his first rally post-COVID was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where I was born and raised. And so when I read, the number of times that he used that term in the rally, it really bothered me. At that point, I had been normal. I was blocking myself from reading any more articles about Trump because it was just so negative and so divisive. But when I read that article, it bothered me so much because my parents live in Tulsa. My friends, my family, my friends' parents, and it worried me, how they were going to be treated. And I think shortly after, and a young Asian woman got assaulted in a Ross, and they said something about her being Chinese, and she wasn't Chinese, but still. And so those things are hurtful, and I think that people don't understand the power of words, and that words are hurtful, they are painful, they have long-lasting effects. Racist words, biased words to children will lead to self-esteem issues down the line to where they're not fulfilling their potential. And when people argue that, well, it's just freedom of speech, well, speech is hurtful. And I think that our society doesn't appreciate the damage of speech and words and the derogatoriness of it as they appreciate someone being physically assaulted. And I think that we need to realize that someone being assaulted by words can be just, if not worse, in terms of the damage that can be done. And so I think it's continuing to educate our allies and continuing to have conversations with each other and recognizing that we're all individuals with, our own unique stories. And we also have a lot of shared values and common ground of connection, empathy, family. And we have to, to see that and to build each other up, because we need to love each other because we're people.
Yeah, and those words, yes, they can hurt, but there was a direct connection to the physical violence. There
right.
are real consequences. So, we need our leaders, especially, of course, to be modeling that and um, calling it out. As I'm so thankful that our new president, even before these awful murders, said we have to stop this. Just clearly, we have to stop it, because he knew that words were leading to assaults. I'm curious, I feel like this is another reminder. Chris Utley, who's one of our brown brothers in the group, black brothers in the group, he we were talking about this term, the browning of America, just that by 2030 we're going to be more than 50% other than non-white. And some people are, I feel like, just flailing, but I see that we have two choices: either to embrace each other and really be blessed by what you're talking about, Anne, loving each other and learning from each other, or totally rejecting one another. It's so upsetting to think that the violence might be part of that. And I guess we just model choosing kindness and hope that for our community and circles. What do you guys think we can do to encourage other people to choose that instead of divisiveness?
I will say, from my standpoint, my friends never understood. If I started talking about racist issues, they would make comments like, "Oh, we don't see you as Asian, Sylvia. You're Sylvia." And they just, and it was very dismissive, but in the way they're trying to say, "Oh, you're just one of us," But but it was like, no, but I do have these things that are different than you. And I've had these like life experiences that are different. And even my own mother didn't see it and she didn't understand it. And it was a struggle for many years. But I think our friends now have to open their eyes and see when we talk. I want people to have a listening ear. I want them to say yes. When you have someone call you ching chong on the playground, that's hurtful, and you remember it. Whether you're 9 years old or 59 years old, like I am, you remember that, and you remember the hurt. And when you're sharing that with your friends, um, I think our friends can teach each other to be sensitive. And as Anne was saying, words build up and they tear down. And we have the opportunity. I choose to build up people every day and not tear down. And we do have a conscious choice to make, and not make comments like, "Oh, kids will be kids, boys will be boys, mean girls will be mean girls." No, we can stop that. And we, as the adults, we have the opportunity to do that. And I see a change. I'll share a little story. So like Anne, I was protecting myself and just reading headlines, not going deep, just emotionally, because I just needed the headlines and it just gets all consuming. But my son, I'm married to a white man, and my son texts me Wednesday morning. He's 25. He lives in Austin, and where he works, and he texts. He said, "I hate that I have to fear for you these days, and people are crazy as hell." And that's what he said. "Please be safe." And I shared back that I loved him and that I was safe, and I'm privileged. I get to work from home. I don't have to use public transportation. I'm not working in a nail salon or restaurant, so I feel very safe. And so, but ironically, that was on Wednesday. On Friday, in front of my house, I hear an 18-wheeler in my neighborhood pull up, and it pulled up in front of my house. And it wasn't a moving van. It was a commercial 18-wheeler. And I was thinking, well, that's kind of odd. And it's right in front of my house. And so I'm kind of keeping an eye on it, seeing who's there. Is anybody there? My husband looked out the window. He couldn't see anyone in the cab. We're both here working. And I could hear the truck. And I didn't want to be visible in front of the window. And so 30 minutes went by. I texted my neighbors and said, "Hey, is anyone expecting a delivery? This is kind of a weird truck out there." And it was just, I have never felt paranoid or fearful in my own home that I did on Friday morning.
Mm.
And I started thinking, I need to be aware. If something's going on, I need to be aware. And finally, I think the guy had pulled up, parked, left the truck running and fell asleep and took a 30-minute nap. And then he delivered a lawnmower to my neighbor across the street. And she's a new neighbor. And, I text her back and she said, I'm sorry for all the, it was our lawnmower. And I said, I was a little nervous and I told her why. And she said, and she said to me, it's like, I am so sorry that you're even going through this fear, and I am learning to be a better ally. So
Oh,
I'm going to tell you right now, that made me almost cry out of joy, because I thought, we didn't use that language a year ago. No
you're
one would ever tell
right.
me I'm learning to be a better ally. And yeah, so I think I I hope is not abstract. Hope is happening, and it's happening in this group. It's happening with our neighbors. So
Thank you for sharing that story. And that's true. For as much hate and negativity, I think there's so much more positivity and reaching out and learning that's happening. What do you think, Anne?
Larry, can you repeat the question again?
Oh, just what do you think? Have you felt some negativity since all of this towards you? Have you had people reaching out in positive ways?
Yes. I had a leader in my job reach out, and she's also, her family has been persecuted, and so she understood what it is to be a minority, and that was really kind. She really did not have to do that, but it showed me that she cared, and I was so grateful for that. I in terms of any personal attacks against me, I haven't felt that as much because during the pandemic I've been at home, and although I talked to my family, and my sister said she was walking her two dogs with her Asian American girlfriend a couple weeks ago, and there was nobody else around them, and somebody rolled down the window and they yelled the N word at them, which is very strange, and very hateful. And so as I'm having these discussions with my family this weekend on how they've been feeling, I've been really surprised and pleased because many of them are so empathetic, even to the people who are saying these things. And my mom told me that she's been here for decades, and she said that she's had so many white allies and so many people that she has wonderful relationships with, and she's always had wonderful relationships with, and that the people who do bad things or racist things, they're not always out of racism, but even if they are, it's not everybody. And 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 I was just so happy to hear her show me not to group people and to still have hope in humanity, and to have hope that there are wonderful people here, and we can make a change if we continue to focus on our our love for each other.
Yeah, she sounds like a wise woman, and that's such a good reminder. I think that's really hard, even for especially when we're talking about the people that feel those racist things. So that is a really good reminder. I think the bottom line really is kind of what you've said. You don't like feeling like you're othered, like you're not supposed to belong here. So in our words, how can we let people know, even strangers, I see you, you're part of this community. I'm glad you're here. You do belong here. You're part of us. And then as you get to know a person better, you might find out about their roots, but that is not the first thing that matters at all. Not your skin color. And so I just feel like that's one thing we can do to cut out the dehumanizing. Is there anything else you guys have on your heart that you want us to do, our community? I've shared an article, and I'll go back and highlight it on our Facebook page, that has like 4 action steps of ways you can support Asian Americans right now. And one of them is really helpful. It talks about things you can say if something offensive is said, just words you can use. And those are things that are even good to practice and just have in your back pocket as an ally or as an Asian American. But anything else that you would direct our community to do?
Well, just as far as a resource, I found myself last summer, with everything that was going on, just reading and watching everything I could watch. PBS had a great documentary. It's a 5-part series called just Asian Americans. And Anne, have you seen that?
I have not seen it.
It's so educational. It's things we're not going to learn in history, just like watching Netflix's 13th. It's just, it's so, and it's done so well. I've learned so much. And history that I didn't know, history that none of us know. And it helped increase my awareness and process how we move forward with things right now. So I do recommend that. Just Google PBS Asian Americans. It's easy. So
yeah, I have heard lots of people say we need to add that to our history too, right? To our schools, for sure.
Absolutely. Because it kind of stops, at World War II. And then we really don't get into any of the other 120,000 Japanese Americans, and all that. So,
and I read that this hearing on anti-Asian hate was the first one in 30 years. And so it needed to happen for sure.
I think we do need to have a voice in government. And I think our representatives need to hear from us. And I really have a heart for representatives who are minorities, who are Asians, who are side to side with the ones who are doubling down on the hate.
Yeah.
And so I think they need to know that that's not all of us. And I think that's—
Yes, I will put that link in here in case anyone missed. I forgot her name, the representative from
Grace Ming.
Grace Ming from New York, right, Sylvia?
Yeah, from New York.
Who had that passionate response. So important, I think, for everyone to see. Any instructions for us, Anne, as a community or individuals?
I think as an individual, just continuing to speak up when we see things like we've been talking about. It's so easy. I mean, it's a psychological phenomenon to be a bystander, and to watch. So, and to continue to educate ourselves so that when we see these things happening, we're ready. We're ready with our ability to stand up for each other. And, of course, just putting our ego aside and continuing to explore what our implicit biases are. Yeah. So that I think that's the most important thing that each of us as individuals can do, so that we're more mindful, of those things and aware of those things. Because if we aren't, then we're going to continue to do things that may be hurtful to others. And also just really, really listening. Mm-hmm. And I think, that's what we should all do for each other. But I think it's easy for people to, see me as a soft-spoken, Asian, petite, kind female, and my voice in a group of people won't stand out, compared to others, such as a white man. And so I think it's really important for us to recognize those biases that we have and really listen to everybody equally.
Well, you guys have proven you each have such a special voice and story to share. Thank you so much for sharing. Sylvia, you wanted to say something else?
I just learned yesterday, I heard something on NPR and and we're in the category of the good minorities, and that's the Asian Americans are the good minorities. We're the good ones. And, that wasn't created as a compliment to us. It was degrading to African Americans, to Blacks.
Mhm.
So that came after a report that they were showing, we had all these Japanese Americans in prison camps after, during World War II. And they came out and look how successful they continued to just persevere and do well. And, within a few years, and Blacks have not done that. And you're still talking about slavery and still talking about your trauma related to that. So they said, look at the good Asians versus you guys. So that's where that came from. I had no idea. And it was upsetting, really. It was upsetting.
So it was pointing out how damaging that was and trying to pit people against each other.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you guys are
against the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing that's really interesting about that stereotype is perhaps somebody would say, oh yeah, but you're the good is a good word. People see you in a favorable light. But my sister told me that growing up in school, because she wasn't turning in her homework all the time, and because Asians were seen as the responsible kids, the good minority, that she was called by one of her classmates the stupid Asian because of that, the stereotype that we're studious and good and hardworking.
The lesson over and over is every individual is an individual. And that's, I guess, what we can teach our kids, right? Well, thank you guys so much for sharing. And we want you to know we're so thankful that you're part of our beloved community, and we're so much richer because we have so many different perspectives, including yours. So keep us, hold us accountable, me and Danita and the other people, as we ask questions. And Anne, we're so glad, is one of our moderators now. So she's helping with some of the decisions. And you guys just give us whatever feedback you have. We'd love to invite more Asian Americans to join our group too. So.
Well, I do love the proverb. I don't know where it came from, but if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I think that's what our group is doing. We're going together. And I think this group embodies that. So thank you.
And that's a great reminder that it's not all going to change this week, right? In spite of our hard work. But yeah, that's why we're working with the preschoolers and the teenagers. We're going to go far together. I love that, Sylvia. Thank you. And do you have anything else?
I second Sylvia.
Well, you guys are great. I loved spending a few minutes with you today on this lovely day. And I want you to feel protected and safe and loved. So if there's anything specific we can do to help you feel that way, please let us know.
Thank you, Lowry.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, beloved community. Thank you.